Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Word around the gridiron is Skip Bayless is soon to be unemployed. Apparently, Fox Sports 1 isn't interested in re-signing him, so he's slated to be gone this summer. At least that's the scuttlebutt. Well, for my part, I come not to praise Skip Bayless, but to bury him. Skip Bayless does like most sportscasters. He's the voice of the bigots, saying what they really think about black people in general, but all under the guise of merely being sports commentary. But these bigots are so slow. They're the last ones to realize when the landscape has changed, and when their privilege and ability to bestow first place upon themselves has begun to erode. Skip Bayless had worked with Stephen Smith for years, and that's pretty much where he came to real prominence. He then would go on to work for Fox Sports, and enter Shannon Sharpe to be his co-pilot. Skip Bayless still thought that he was the star of the show at this point, but he wasn't. Shannon Sharpe was the horse pulling the cart now, and even as myopic and self-centered as Skip Bayless is, even he could see that Shannon was easily outshining him. Shannon was the man now. He was the reason people were watching. And that reality ate Skip Bayless alive. Oh, he was able to keep a lid on it more or less for a few years, but eventually he had to let the truth out because he just couldn't stand it. That's what drove so much of the disrespect that Bayless showed Shannon. Skip Bayless was terrified that Shannon was going to come for his job, or just as badly, that Shannon might suggest that Skip be dismissed and someone else put in his chair. You see, the world of media is supposed to be about competition, especially when it comes to sports. Because sports is all about covering athletic competition. So doesn't it make all the sense in the world, just common sense, that the people behind the microphones would have to be competing for their jobs too? Except that's not how white privilege actually works, definitely not the white media. Skip Bayless didn't have what it took to hold on to his spot, and he was living in mortal fear of losing it to Shannon Sharpe. Never mind the fact that Shannon Sharpe had not made any moves against him. As far as Skip Bayless was concerned, the very fact that Shannon Sharpe was so easily outshining him, that was the problem. Of course, being dense and self-centered, Skip Bayless thought that Shannon Sharpe was totally expendable and replaceable, and his white corporate paymasters clearly thought the same. Any fool could see that Bayless was just a pencil-neck chump sitting at a desk. Shannon had the charisma and the interest of the audience. Not to mention Skip Bayless is old. He's still doing the same shtick he's been doing since the 1980s. Shannon was the going concern, but Fox Sports, being part of Rupert Murdoch's yellow journalism empire, didn't care about that. So they let Skip Bayless show disrespect to Shannon Sharpe until he finally had enough, culminating in Bayless's blatant show of contempt for the near death of NFL player Damar Hamlin. Now, this kind of blatant bigotry may have amused and tickled the sick sensibilities of the white paymasters and executives at Fox Sports 1, but for everybody else, it was a real turnoff. Skip Bayless was destroying what little audience support he thought he had. Now, if the white media actually was about business and not racial ideology, then any fool could see that if the network had to make a choice between who should stay and who should go, it was obvious Bayless had to go. But the racists who run these white media outlets don't care about profits first. They'll sooner see their little media outlets go belly up before they give up the dirty thrill of having someone who spews bile about black people. So no, family, no matter what the white media or their surrogates try to tell you, it's not about green. They already have all of that. It's about black and white. Now, after Shannon Sharpe left Undisputed, Bayless knew that he had to whitewash his tarnished reputation somehow, and he needed some simple-minded Negroes to help him do it. Skip Bayless showed just how oblivious he was to the changes that had come to the media landscape. He thought that all he had to do was just put any black person in that chair opposite of him, and the show would go on same as usual. And why not? After all, Skip Bayless had made an entire career out of sitting across the table from black men who were far more talented than he was. He thought that he would find a way to reverse engineer another Shannon Sharpe, some black former NFL player or other who could sit across the table from him, and it would be the same thing, so he tried it. He had Michael Irvin, Keyshawn Johnson, Richard Sherman, even Paul Pierce. These were just some of the chumps who decided to play the fool for him. After the heinous disrespect that he had showed to Shannon Sharpe, there shouldn't have been any black person in their right mind who would be willing to be on the same set as Skip Bayless. But these Negroes thought that Bayless was going to be their meal ticket, that white power would keep him suspended in midair forever. But as I've always told you, white power can give you a platform, but it can't give you legitimacy. Sooner or later, this washed-up has-been would have to show that he still had the pulse of the people. But he didn't. In the years since Shannon Sharpe left, Skip Bayless's ratings have gone in one direction: down. And now there's no way for anyone to deny the hard truth that Shannon Sharpe was the one doing Skip Bayless the favor, not the other way around. Shannon gave Skip something he never had: personality. Skip Bayless never had the respect of his media colleagues, nor the athletes that he talked trash about, and as we see, he didn't even have the respect of the viewing public. It's a survival instinct for someone to recognize when they don't have the upper hand. Only a fool tries to act like they've got more power than they actually do. Shannon Sharpe said some stupid stuff in the past, to be sure, that's why the white media put him on the payroll, but he also said some things that were not stupid. And on top of that, Shannon Sharpe understands the business that he's in and how to maximize whatever assets he's got. And while Skip Bayless has been sinking like a lead balloon, Shannon Sharpe has been going from strength to strength. He got a multi-year deal with ESPN immediately after leaving Fox Sports, and his YouTube channels have been the biggest thing in podcasting. If he was white, he would already have been offered a huge Joe Rogan-sized deal by some white media entity. But as it stands, he's doing just fine on his own. He's carved out a niche and he's making the most of it. So, what's next for the now defunct Skip Bayless? I suppose he could try to get his old job back at ESPN, but Shannon Sharpe's already there, and so is Pat McAfee. These are younger guys, and they're the big guns for the network, and at this point, seriously, who wants to extend Skip Bayless's career any further? Sure, people may remember him, but not fondly. What network producer or executive is looking forward to Skip Bayless being on their airwaves? Who in the white media is anxiously anticipating Skip Bayless's next move, as opposed to the people who are all saying they just hope he goes away? It's hard to see any sort of broadcast outlet that would actually want him, and even if they did, he won't get the kind of money that he used to. Maybe he'll try to start a podcast, but it certainly won't do as well as Shannon Sharpe's has. Maybe he and Jason Whitlock can do some sort of joint venture. I can certainly suggest a title for it: A Couple of Losers. And speaking of losers, at this point one has to wonder how much longer before Emmanuel Acho gets shown the door. That smiling, boot-licking, butt-kissing clown, he's another one who's only on TV because he kisses white power's hairy behinds extra sweet. But there's a limit to how far even that can go. So there's a few lessons to be learned here, family. One is that respect and gratitude are not in the vocabulary of people with racial privilege. The second is, for privileged, unqualified loudmouths like Skip Bayless, depending on a white media monopoly to feed them, they're terrified of a meritocracy because they've never had to compete. And the third is, for Negroes who think that they're going to be a subsidiary of these kind of bigots, that they're going to swing on their coattails, the white media can create a bubble around itself, but sooner or later reality always gets the last word. And when the Skip Baylesses of the world's bubble bursts, so do these would-be Negro hangers-on. You know, for a guy who was allowed to make a living giving his unqualified opinions about athletes, now Skip Bayless can spend his time watching as everyone else makes sport of him. But it serves him right. When you get undeserved success, when nobody tells you that you're not as good as you think you are, well, you can't really say you're surprised when the game passes you by. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Deshaun Boatwright, Chevalier Foster, Turk McKenzie, Matthew Liggins, and Williams. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.